And welcome back to the Lead Tamer channel for part 3 of our series, this video series, Passing the CCIE Routing and Switching Written Exam, Materials and Cost. And this is what maybe a lot of you came here for, or came to this list for, or what a lot of people are really interested in. You know, what materials did you use? How much did it cost you? We're going to go over that today by means of just a materials list. And I'm going to list some materials. I have a worksheet which is available here and will be linked below. And I have my recommendation on each of these, what I thought about them. By the way, if you have missed other parts of the series, I recommend you check those out first. Right up above will be a suggestion card pointing you to the playlist link. Now, what I did when I was writing out this agenda is just kind of went over the tools that I wanted to get based on sort of the learning phase. So that was talked about in the last video, which is, you know, you have concept phase, you're learning the concepts and the protocols, etc. And then you have the trivial pursuit, or the trivial phase, or the detailed phase. So this would be like your diffuse mode, and then you have your focus mode of learning. So I'm going to pull up actually this. Why don't we do this just side by side here? So yeah, this is the cost sheet, which is available, by the way, and is linked here. At this link, this bit.ly link will take you to the worksheet, which is out of my GitHub repo, which you can download and, you know, update yourself or use it however you would like to, right? So I'm basically going to go over by books, because this, of course, is concept phase. So this is something that, you know, you're maybe learning new technologies for you, or you are trying to go get a deeper understanding of protocols. And under books, by the way, the way this worksheet is laid out, this is what I use to budget. So this is a cost estimate as of 2015 when I first did this budget. And then this is actual, which is most of the data here. There is one thing that was sponsored, which is a written exam. I'll get into that. But yeah, so again, this first column was estimated. I actually did a blog post about this, and did a blog post about a example proposal memo on packet pushers going back to 2015. I believe it's 2015. Yeah, so it's been a while. But this is what I estimated. I mainly got this book list from an INE video about getting started with your CCIE and doing, you know, getting your reading or ready to do your reading. And this is what I proposed. This is what I ended up paying. A lot of this, of course, was covered by, later I got Safaribooksonline. And I did this kind of strange. I did this in a way where I paid way too much. A lot of these books, folks, you can get on Safaribooksonline service. And what I did at first, I was not a part of a study group then. I didn't really know. I wasn't in any forums or anything like that. I was basically on my own. And me and Brian McGann, basically, in his videos, which is great. He actually suggested Safaribooksonline. I learned about it, went and signed up. And I was doing month by month. So it's $39 a month. And I was just trying to see what it was about before I made another investment. I think you do 1 year or even more. Eventually, I wised up somewhat, and I was like, okay, I need to do this for a year over year. So I paid the $199 fee, and which is a lot cheaper. That was actually a discount. That was a deal. I think retail it's $3.99, but if you look out for deals, of course, from time to time they will publish a, you know, a discount in the year or whatever, and I got $200 off. But then at some point I learned, I think it was through Router Gods initially group, about this acm.org membership, which for 1 year is $99, and that gets you access to Safaribooksonline and Skillsoft. And I've used both. So my book price was way above, you know, and when I look at this, I think if I would have bought a, you know, retail version of Routing TCP/IP Volume 2 at the time anyway for $61 and all these other books, I would have spent less money. That's true, but with Safaribooksonline, you get a lot more than just books. And access to entire books. You can search by chapter. And that's something that is mentioned in the INE video as well. So this is, of course, is what I would recommend. This is what I have now, and that's what I'm using. So anyway, that was books. I do have a book list of everything that I read. I read actually several books cover to cover in the beginning. Just trying to do it right, you know, feeling my way through how to do this whole CCIE thing. And also list some other books like by chapter, like when I cover specifically, got into the INE workbook on BGP, then I would find a particularly good book on BGP, oftentimes dedicated to that topic, like BGP, for example. And I have those listed out and with their links to where they are on Safaribooksonline. Also, for the evolving technologies, I'll get into this more in, I think that's going to be the next video, which is about the evolving technologies section 1.1. And of course, this is Nicholas Russo's free evolving technologies guide that I used up on Learning Network. You can, of course, I don't know if he's still taking it, but you can contribute to that effort. Donate, I should say. So you've got reading, then you've got video courses, right, which is very important. And as I've already mentioned, I purchased initially on a video course from INE. And I use the written video course, of course, for the written exam. There's also course material for labs, and they have like previous versions of the exams. They have information on it as well. They have materials, whether that be videos, workbooks, etc. So what I did is I actually purchased a combo deal. So it was kind of hard to itemize this because I had estimated it initially like $600, but I'd also estimated rack tokens, 1,250. So I ended up just buying a package deal that they do from time to time. You know, keep an eye out. You can always call and, you know, talk to someone in sales, and generally they can, you know, they did work with me. I did ask, you know, for some consideration, and also they gave me the ability to pay in payments. I didn't have to pay everything up front, and I got immediate access to all the material. I could immediately get started, which is great. So I use this video course from INE, and again, it was $16.25. I actually have, I don't think it shows much. I spent a lot of time working on this video just trying to find all the receipts because I had not kept up with the costs over the years, and I wish I would have done that now. But yeah, I have all the receipts here, and I think all this shows is just the, yeah, routing and switching labs, something, and then this deal came with actually an additional 250 rack rental tokens, which I have not used at all, by the way, but they're there for big labs. And as you can see, 3/31/2015. So going back to the agenda items here. So I had that video course, and I had, of course, the workbook. As I mentioned before, this always depends on your strategy. We talked about strategy in the first video. I, of course, chose the strategy to to do labbing first, due to my lack of experience with the protocols, to go through the lab workbook. So depending on when you do that, at some point, though, you need a workbook for the CCIE, whether that be INE, Micronics. There are a number of, you know, there are a few actually workbooks out there for routing and switching that you can select. But I use this workbook, and that was included in that bundle. By the way, you can, and you know, I'm not an expert on INE. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not affiliated with anyone at all. So, you know, this is my complete unbiased opinion on these products, right? But some people do the all access pass on INE, which is also sort of a monthly thing, I believe. And then you can go out and just like buy the workbook. I think the workbook itself might be either $200 or $300. I'm not sure. So depends on what you want to do there. Then after I've had the written fails, I realized that I had not gone into and I'm going to talk about this in my mistakes, in the mistakes portion, but I had to go back and go a little broader in the written content. So I needed some additional coverage, basically, and I needed a review. So I needed another course to go through. And that's when, a lot of times I would search these technologies after my first fail, and I'd do a lookup, and I'd often lead to networklessons.com. And I'd heard people talk about it on Router Gods as well, and I ended up signing up. That is under training materials here, networklessons.com, a 1-year subscription, which is the best deal, it seems, because you can pay month to month also. They also give you a 1-week trial for $1. So I did that first, and I checked it out, and I was amazed at the content. So I signed up for a 1-year subscription. What's cool about networklessons.com, there's a lot, but one is generally the lessons there. There's a routing and switching written course, and then there is a lab, just the CCIE routing and switching course, among others. They have CCNP, CCNA, but I opted, I really wanted to go through the written course. And what's really cool is there are new lessons that come out. Like when there's changes to the evolving technologies, back in October, there was an upgrade from 1.0 to 1.1. There were changes to the blueprint. Well, over time, Renee Molinar, who's the instructor there, has, each week, essentially, he adds a new lesson in networklessons.com. So there's new technology in there as well, which is really cool. Also, what I really liked about networklessons.com is, INE had the written course. They have the lab, Advanced Technologies workbook. They don't coincide like 100%. They don't like mesh perfectly. But networklessons.com for each lesson generally has a video, Renee himself giving instruction, going through a lab. And then is of course the article. I call it an article, but it's a written lesson. And in there it has configuration files, which you can copy and create in your own lab, which I loved. And I did that several times when I was having trouble grasping, like, let me just lab it up myself. I'll copy Renee's configs into my lab and just, see how it works. Also, generally in those lessons, he'll have links to CloudShark with packet captures that went along with the lab. There's a lot of illustrations and diagrams. So it was really helpful to me for that, concept phase of learning. And oftentimes it took me going back, reviewing the lesson a few times, maybe even labbing until it would start to click on certain technologies. So again, $289.20 a year is what I paid there. Yeah, as it mentions here, broadest topic coverage for all other courses, good explanations, very visual teacher, videos, labs, captures. I highly recommend this for sure. And then I did use, when I was going through MPLS and BGP, I watched the INE videos. I had done labs in the workbook, but I was still missing some things. And so I complemented it with access to Pluralsight. Now I have access to Pluralsight through my employer. So I discovered, they don't have, they have CCIE lessons, but it's not thorough as, you would maybe expect to see. I don't know, but they had Joe Astorino, who I got to meet at Cisco Live. Very nice to meet him, and I really like his teaching style. For me anyway, his teaching style clicked really well, and by that time I'd already covered and felt comfortable with some of the other protocols like EIGRP, OSPF, which he had videos for. But then I got to the BGP and multi-protocol BGP and MPLS, and that was a really great course. I really got a lot out of it. And of course, I've gone, especially with evolving technologies and some of the other more esoteric topics that are in the blueprint for the written exam, I found a lot of help material on the Cisco Live On Demand library. What I tended to do on that was download the presentation first, then see thumb through the presentation, and then see if there was anything in there that might be helpful to watch the video on or read additional articles on. So that was helpful. and of course, Safaribooksonline, as I mentioned. Now, as far as courses go, there's a lot of coverage on specific topics that you can find. They're actually video courses. I was struggling at some point after the first or second, I forget. But anyway, there's some key concepts of IoT that were just not getting through, I guess, or I wasn't comprehending the importance of. And I found some really great videos on IoT, and they went really in depth in areas which was hard to find on any of these other. So again, this was talked about in the last video, but you have to be tenacious. Prepare to be disappointed by certain vendors, because no one solution is perfect that I've found yet. So, you're going to find gaps in what you need to learn these different topics. Use what you can, use what you got. And these are what I've used a lot during that concept phase. I'll move right along. I call Trivial Pursuit. I know some people may not like that, but let's all admit it. There's a lot of details, memorization that you need to know going into the written exam. One thing that really helped me evaluate myself was the Boson written practice exam. There's a link here. This is really helpful in identifying the gaps. Obviously, you don't expect to see. This is a reputable product. It's not a dump product. There's a reputable product in the community and known by Cisco. And it was really good at evaluating myself. Like I said, it was difficult at times to go through the blueprint and not have your mind want to sort of skip things out of either laziness or just angst or whatever. But the Boson is really good at bringing home, hey, look, you're weak. You thought you had layer 2, but guess what? You're weak on this particular topic in layer 2, and you just didn't know it. For that, the Boson written practice exam is excellent. I've used Boson products in the past for CCNP, and here it is, the XM Max. I paid $89.88. That may have been, Boson also runs deals sometimes. I think this may have been near the end of the year, but it has 500 questions. It helps pinpoint your knowledge gaps, as I said. And what was really cool is if sometimes, you would miss a question and you'd think, no, I don't agree with that. That's wrong. Well, Boson will happily provide you links to Cisco Docs. As long as Cisco hasn't retired the documentation or moved it or something, and don't get me started on that. But a lot of great links are like, hey, and oftentimes what was cited in the question is right there in a paragraph in the document. And then you can go above and below and sort of get the background and go a little deeper. So some of the information is out of date. They do updates all the time. Like the product will say downloading update, but some of the evolving stuff, newer stuff is not there. And there are some commands I found. I forget. It might have been like IGMP timers or PIM timers or something like that, where the default answer might be on an older platform. So you just have to be aware of those kinds of things and do your due diligence. The other one that I use to sort of hone, or this is leading up to taking the written exam and sort of identifying additional gaps, reviewing, just kind of cramming and jogging my memory prior to playing the Trivial Pursuit game, was CCIE in 8 weeks, which I was pleasantly surprised to find as part of your acm.org subscription or membership. And there's a Skillsoft link when you sign into the library. And in there was CCIE in 8 weeks. Some others in our study group. By the way, there's a link below to Discord. And that is where, a number of us will meet up, exchange ideas and things like that. But it had really good summaries. It was real good to sort of rifle through. And it did have a few questions. There's not a lot that was available in terms of questions, like review practice questions in the ACM, through the Skillsoft portal. But of course, they had a link to their site where you can go and download kind of like the Boson practice questions. There were a few in there, and they were really good. They had good summaries, and that's really, you're not learning concepts here with these sorts of products at all. This is just identifying your gaps. It's memory drills, reviewing your memory, getting ready for some of those details that might be in the written exam. And as I have here, it's good for a final review or sort of just another take or sweep on the products. And then Safaribooksonline searches. So I did a number of this. I mentioned the video series. And finally, last but not least, again, this is when you're in focus mode of learning. And maybe you missed the question on GMP v3, right? So what you want to do is, or I should say, or MLD v2 or something like that. And you've looked at all the materials that you have, and you still feel like you're missing some details, or the Boson exam revealed that there's some points about that protocol that you really don't know, and you've done Google searches, you've done other searches. Don't be afraid to go, of course, Cisco Documentation. Now, Cisco Documentation is throughout, folks. There's some really amazing, well-written, very good Cisco docs out there, and I love them. I use them a lot. There are also some documents that are poorly written. It's a mix, like everything else. But, of course, I did a lot of Google searches with site:/cisco.com so that I could get to learning and the official docs and things like that. But also RFCs. Again, there's a mix. There's some RFCs that are just way too deep. You don't need to worry about memorizing everything in the RFC to prepare for the written exam. But there are some topics, and I won't go into them now. A few come to mind in my head already, but that I just couldn't find good information on. And I knew that, it was either a question from a review question, or it was something in my mind that I wanted an answer to. Sometimes I would write out a question that popped into my head. Like, I want to know why that is. And without trying to go too far down a rabbit hole, I would search it. And oftentimes those answers only came from the RFCs. And even in the INE videos, they will refer to RFCs, and you need to sometimes read an RFC in order to find the material that you need to know. So I'll just cover some of the other things that I have here. I think I already said by accident. So we covered, exam fee. So I had to pay one out of pocket for fail. This is sponsored by employer. Another one where I passed, got reimbursed for. Some of this is not filled out yet. Obviously, this is not just for the written, but this is for, this was my estimate for the written and the lab for getting the CCIE number. Went over books, training materials, also lab gear. Again, this could probably be another complete video. I'm not going to go into that a lot. I'll probably do that once I get my number and pass the lab. But I did estimate, budget on using Cisco Viral. And I guess I will mention this a little bit because you will need, even studying for the written, depending on your approach, you're either going to do a lot of labbing before you attack the written, or you're going to go directly for the written. And there will be times where sometimes the only way to find the answer or clear it up in your mind is to do a quick lab. And I did that a number of times during the written, just to see it or just to help grasp some of the concepts. And I would, grab a Wireshark capture and check it out just to see exactly what was happening on the wire. That can be very helpful. So anyway, I did Viral year 1. I got a discount the first year. I renewed it, or I did not renew it. I let it lapse. And then I found a coupon, which they have from time to time. And I did 2 years of Viral and ran it on a MacBook Pro. And then the third year I did a renewal, and I'm not using it now because at some point along the way, I don't know. I have other videos about that, but now I'm using even G. I also have GNS3 as a backup that I use as well. But I got the images that you need. So this is where you can get legitimate images. You don't have to, and you shouldn't, go on the dark web or something and try to find images. These are legit images. Cisco updated them, and they work for routing and switching labs. So this is what I used. Those are the images I use now. I also had to get VMware Fusion Pro. I had to do a few little hardware upgrades, and that's what I'm at so far on labbing. This will go up, though, at some point. But again, this is about passing the written exam. So thanks so much for stopping by. Again, at some point I'll have the card appear whenever the next video is available, and you can just click on it to part 4, which I believe is the Evolving Technologies, CCIE and CCDE. And thanks so much for stopping in, and we'll see you back here soon in the Land Tamer channel.